The Adventure of Archaeology, published by National Geographic, was a book my parents gave me when I was young. I didn't read a word in it, but it was full of photos of archaeological sites around the world, and I remember looking at the photos for hours. It was about that time that Raiders of the Lost Ark debuted, and, like most kids who watched it, I decided to become an archaeologist when I grew up. I even memorized how to spell archaeologist. I can still remember the cadence I used in my mind today. Archaeologist. The primary reason I chose Mexico City for this quick trip was its proximity to the ancient city of Teotihuacan. I woke up at 5 a.m. so that I could be at Amigo Tours in downtown Mexico City by 6 a.m. for the tour. I walked through the mostly empty and mostly quiet parks and early morning streets. When I arrived at the tour desk, I checked in and soon after boarded the bus for Teotihuacan. It was still dark when we left the city, but the sun rose soon after. As I watched the sunrise and the outskirts of the city blurred past my window, I tried to think of everything that I knew about the ancient city of Teotihuacan. I knew there were two fine pyramids that you used to be able to climb, but couldn't climb anymore. I knew that the base of the larger pyramid was nearly as large as the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, but its height was not nearly as tall. I also knew that this wasn't an Aztec city, but had been abandoned several hundred years before the Aztec arrived in the area. And finally, I knew that Teotihuacan's origin and its inhabitants are still largely a mystery. I knew we were getting close when I saw the hot air balloons, probably 30 of them. Viewing the ruins from hot air balloon is a popular activity. We on the bus watched the balloons for about 15 minutes on our approach to the site. After a brief introduction at the park entrance, our guide told us we would begin our tour at her favorite of the three temples. Wait, 3 temples? Though it is the smallest, the first temple we were to visit is our guide's favorite because she believes it is the most beautiful. It is the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. As we approached the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, we stopped in the middle of the Avenue of the Dead and looked toward the Temple of the Moon at the other end of the avenue about a mile away. From here we could begin to understand the size of this long abandoned city. Over the next 3 hours we would be slowly walking from one end to the other, stopping often to study the ruins. The Temple of the Feathered Serpent is the smallest, yet best preserved of the 3 pyramids. The reason it is the best preserved is also a hint as to what may have been a factor in the abandonment of the site. Our guide explained that within the settlement it seems there were 4 social groups that ruled the town in a semi-democratic way as opposed to being governed by a monarch. It is theorized that 3 of the groups, the jaguar, the bird, and the storm god, Tlaloc, rebelled against the group of the feathered serpent. A major piece of evidence behind this theory is the fact that when modern archaeologists began excavating the site, they discovered that the Temple of the Feathered Serpent had been built in layers. One archaeologist peeled back a layer just enough to see that laborers took great effort to cover some of the most sacred carvings and symbols of the group of the Feathered Serpent, as if to erase it from the record. Of course, that is just a theory. What is certain is that whoever decided to cover up the facade of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent only succeeded in preserving it, so that today we can all study and enjoy the detailed carvings. Leaving the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, We began a pleasant stroll along the Avenue of the Dead toward the Temple of the Moon. I was impressed by the evenly spaced and uniformly sized mini-temples that lined the Avenue of the Dead. Evidently, the Aztec, nearly 1,000 years after Teotihuacan was abandoned, were also impressed with these mounds. The Aztec theorized that these mounds were burial structures, and, based on that theory, the Aztec called this grand avenue the Avenue of the Dead. Modern archaeologists are confident the Aztec were wrong in their conclusion that these mounds served other, more practical purposes for the people living in the city, including being the foundation for high-rise housing structures, which just happened to be our next stop on the avenue. The residential complex is just one of hundreds that once surrounded the Avenue of the Dead. Most of them are probably still there, now buried underneath grass and sod. However, this excavated housing complex provides a valuable glimpse in the lives of the mysterious inhabitants of the city. Perhaps the most striking aspect of the housing unit to me was the central courtyard. It was easy to imagine 3 or 4 generations gathered there in the evening. Kids are playing tag, adolescents are whispering about the neighboring adolescents, men are comparing obsidian tools, and the women are probably working and gossiping. Finally, the old people are discussing the weather and complaining about the kids these days. Moving further down the Avenue of the Dead, eventually we came to the Pyramid of the Sun on our right. It is the tallest pyramid and the most imposing. Unfortunately, visitors can no longer climb the steps to the top, but you can climb the massive terrace at the base of the pyramid. By this time, the sun was pretty high in the sky, and the archaeological park was beginning to fill with fellow travelers. Whereas my tour was mostly alone when we admired the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, we were now enjoying the Pyramid of the Sun with a group of 60 or 70. It was also about this time that I felt our tour was going too quickly, and I wished I could just sit on the stairs and sketch the lines and shadows and shapes of the pyramids around me. Before I could really absorb the significance of the Pyramid of the Sun, our tour guide was leading us toward the Temple of the Moon. Fortunately, visitors are allowed to climb this one, not to the top, but to a large terrace below the apex. I joined the crowd taking the very steep steps to the terrace, then looked back at the Avenue of the Dead and appreciated the distance we had just explored. I saw the Temple of the Sun and several of those smaller mounds. I saw other mounds that were somewhat excavated, and I saw some that were still buried in the earth and may never be uncovered. I took a seat on the temple terrace with the other tourists. I sipped my water and tried to absorb the place and this experience, but I saw my tour guide and others in my group down below heading to the bus, the signal that it was time to go. 3 hours hadn't been long enough. I would have liked to spend the day in quieter areas of the city, sketching the carved and engraved images on the temples and walls. I would have liked to sit on top of the Temple of the Moon until sunset and the closing of the park. I would have enjoyed exploring the residential areas more thoroughly, and I have several questions I would love to ask a researcher. Hesitantly, I descended the steps of the Temple of the Moon. I had spent a good part of the tour interacting off and on with a friendly German couple that was part of my group. I spotted them and we walked to the bus together. The bus drove us to a nearby restaurant, and the German couple and I sat together and ate grilled vegetables and discussed the affairs of the world. We shared the assessment that from this point in February 2026, it appears that we are transitioning into a new world order. An order where might makes right, and superpowers are allowed to expand and deal with weaker nations without international accountability. I didn't make the connection at the time, but it is kind of a gut punch of reality now. Three humans sitting in the shadows of a fallen civilization and discussing the transition from a global system that had been our reality to some unknown new reality. But maybe that is the lesson that we must learn over and over again. Civilizations rise and civilizations fall, and inevitably the survivors are left eating grilled vegetables in the shadows of their ruins.